What's up, guys? It's LOH at Lollipop. We're doing a quick review of the brand new Amazon Fire tablet. This is the $50 7-inch tablet that Amazon has been touting. It's currently on back order for anybody looking for it, but should you actually buy one? That's the question we're going to be looking to answer right now. So let's take a quick look at the device. This is the tablet right here. You can see it is a 16:9 device. It's rather tall for a tablet, or rather short if you look at it this way. But overall, the dimensions aren't that bad. The bezel is not huge. It's not small, but it's not huge. The camera placement's right here in the middle. More on those later. Looking on the back, nothing much to really report there. Just the speaker, which is, well, we'll talk about that more later too, and the camera placement here. All the buttons and everything are up here on the top with the power, volume up and down, charger. The number one reason people are interested in this tablet is its price, $50. So what does $50 buy you these days? And in short, it buys you a tablet that would have been good for $200 about 3 years ago. So let's go ahead and take a look at the device. The number one question people get with cheap devices is a screen. The screen on this device is good for $50, bad for most other price brackets. The contrast is all right. It does get fairly bright, although not as bright as, any high-end tablets you would get, but definitely bright enough to be used anywhere indoors, probably not outdoors. Same thing, it also gets fairly dim. So you can use this, in bed while you're reading in a low light place. And considering it's a Kindle, that's a good thing. You are going to be using this for reading devices. However, the worst thing about this screen is the resolution. It is 1024 by 600, which is in the neighborhood of like 150 ppi on a 7-inch. That's pretty bad nowadays. For phones, that would be horrible. For tablets, it's still pretty bad. Compared to pretty much any other device you can buy as a tablet, the only thing that'd come anywhere close would be probably Chinese tablets that you can order online, which pretty much this is. If you are anywhere familiar with the Nextbook series of tablets, their lowest end ones, it's very much similar to this. Although this screen is IPS, which means that you aren't really going to lose a lot of definition. It's not going to fade to white at all the different angles, although you do get some nice bluing at certain viewing angles. One thing to note about this tablet is the quality control. And in regards to display here in particular, mine had a stuck pixel. I tried removing it, using some of the common methods to freeing a stuck pixel, and it was not able to fix that. So we'll see how many of these actually occur during, when people actually start getting them in mass. But it is something to be aware of. The screen quality for $50 is fine. The quality control, may not be up to what other manufacturers are doing. Taking a look at the OS, you can finally see that Amazon is taking cues from standard Android implementations. It has several different windows. It has your list of apps, but it's not necessarily anywhere near as good as the basic Android implementation, just because there are so many things that scrolling through you can find that it is not necessarily easy to get to one thing over the other. You can scroll this way and click at the top, but it's not necessarily the best way of finding apps. So if you know about an app you're looking for, you can use a search function or scroll through here, but some of the niceties are kind of hidden in these later pages. Other than that, though, it is a very familiar interface for most Android users. Although being at such a low resolution on this kind of screen, you can see fonts don't really fit into the notification bar. You can see this here. Doesn't fit. There's extra lines that are not actually in there. And everything looks really wrong. The font just doesn't fit, and making it smaller does not really fix the problem, especially since everything looks very pixelated. But for navigating the UI, it doesn't really come into, like, the screen resolution doesn't hurt it too much. And if you are familiar with Android, or you're familiar with most smartphones in general, you shouldn't have any trouble finding any of your settings. Everything moves pretty smoothly all the way around, not too much in the way of stuttering or hiccups in terms when you're loading apps, but it's not necessarily the fastest interface that I've seen. Nothing's blazing, but I didn't really have any issues actually using or loading apps. The web browser is not necessarily something you'd want to use for long-term usage, but overall, like, I was able to navigate to pages and look up information without too much trouble. The Silk browser is not necessarily the best, but it does work. The downside of it being an Amazon device is that there is no Google Play Store. You should be able to add that in on your own fairly easily. There probably aren't many guides dedicated to this particular device as of yet. That should be coming pretty soon. So there may be some apps that you need to get through other means. For example, the Antutu app that we use here for benchmarking, the official one that's inside the Android, inside the Amazon store, actually wouldn't run on this device, but the official one that was on the store, the Play Store, would. So we actually had to get that on the side load that app just to run the tests. This device is really targeted for a consumer, people who are going to be watching videos, playing games, not necessarily generating any content on here. And in that way, it actually does pretty well. With the screen resolution being lower, it actually works pretty well for games, in the sense that it takes a lot less horsepower to run them. And for videos, everything looks really nice and sharp on the screen, even though the color saturation is not, the best. The viewing angles are good for $50, but they're not the best overall. The speaker is mono, which is a bummer, but most people are probably going to be using headphones with this device, but it does get fairly loud. You can kind of skip this around, get to different part, but it's loud enough to be enjoyed by one person in the room, but at max volume, you could still hear me. It's not going to be something that you actually want to share with other people through this. The cameras on this device are pretty bad. The back camera is 2 megapixels, the front camera is VGA. So this is the front camera now, where you can see the camera, and in bright lights, the picture is not terrible. You actually can, make out things, and the colors are all right. At night, it really looks like you're filming something off of an old-fashioned Razr phone, so it's not something you would really want to use. The back camera is about the same in quality. What's really interesting about it is the small field of view. So flipping this over, taking a picture, even at this short distance, you don't really see that much stuff on the side. The field of view is pretty small on this thing. And the same thing, it's 2 megapixels. You're not really going to blow anybody away with the pictures. And it's a tablet. You shouldn't be taking pictures with it anyways. If you have any phone in the last couple years, you're going to be taking much better pictures off of that. But it would serve for Skype meetings or things like that in a pinch. The device only has about 8 gigabytes of internal storage, and most of that's going to be used by the operating system. It is running Android 5.1, which was a surprise to me. I was expecting 5.0, but 5.1, so it's currently up to date, although that will change very soon with the release of Android Marshmallow. You can see you do get about about 5.5 gigs of space you can use. I've already used a gig just with a couple little things. You can put a micro SD card to get more storage onto here. This being a primarily video watching device, things like that. You could fit a lot of movies onto the micro SD card here. You could install games and stuff like that onto the SD card as well. The processor in here is quad core, but it's not necessarily anything current. It's probably a little bit slower than what you would get in a Snapdragon 400, although the GPU might be slightly better than when you get a Snapdragon 400. So, Antutu, you get about 22,000. That's pretty low for any new device coming out. Something with a Snapdragon 615 gets about 33,000. So, like 50% more than this one. But for watching videos, playing two-dimensional games, you should be fine, as well as some older 3D games, or maybe things like Minecraft, especially if you tweak the settings down. Battery life on this device is actually pretty good. Standby works really well, especially for a device of this price. Usually, cheaper devices have horrible battery life. In this one, you really don't get that. So if you're watching a lot of videos, if this is a kid's device, they're carrying it around, they don't have to worry about charging it every day. The biggest downside of this device really is compromise for the price. For a brand new device for $50, it's pretty amazing what you can get. But on the used market, if you already have a tablet that's a couple years older, it may not compare quite so favorably. So let's take a look at, this is the Nexus 7 2013. You can see it's just a slightly bigger. The screen is 16 by 10 instead of 16 by 9, so it's a little bit wider, it's a little bit longer, although it is thinner than the Amazon Fire tablet. But in pretty much every single category, from internal space to cameras to screen to speed, this is going to blow it away. So if you can get this for $50 somewhere else, I would definitely recommend getting this. But it may or may not be something you can do for the money. The same thing, if you have a really large phone, say something like a Nexus 6, the screen is not that much bigger. It's, the extra inch, the bezels make this one look substantially bigger, but the screen itself is not that much bigger, especially since this device is lighter than this one here, and you can hold it closer to your face, and the resolution is much better. So if you have a big phone, this may not be the device for you. But overall, $50 buys you a lot more than it used to. Several years ago, the only thing you'd get for $50 are the really cheap bargain bin Chinese tablets that ran Android 2.2 and had no space and ran off of 256 megabytes of RAM, and they were pretty terrible devices. If this was 3 years ago, would be at least a $200 tablet, and it would probably sold really, really well. Today, at $50, it'll probably still sell really, really well. But if you have anything that's a couple years old or newer, you'll probably already have something better than this. So if you're going to be using it, if you need a tablet for one-off purposes, like we are planning on using this on running our IP camera servers, you could definitely do that. And for $50, why not try it, see how it works? But $50, I said, there is some quality control issues like with the screen, so it may not be pristine, and you won't be using it for pictures or anything like that. And also, you won't be using it to play 3D games that much, and you also won't be able to really store a lot of stuff onto it unless you actually put it in the micro SD card. And you won't be really using it to listen to music through the speaker that much, just because it doesn't get that loud. But if you aren't going to be doing any of those things that much, or you really just planning on watching some movies, things like that, especially if you're already a Prime member, you already are invested into the Amazon store, the Amazon ecosystem, for $50, it's hard to go wrong with the Amazon Fire tablet. Thanks for watching, guys. This is LOH with Low Tech, and this is the Amazon Fire $50 tablet. Subscribe.